We'll be making some chai tea with Elizabeth, who is partner care. What was it? Partner care. Remind me again, Elizabeth. Specialist. Okay, got it. So I'm going to let her introduce you. Or introduce herself. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, my name's Liz, and I work at WorldVenture as the partner care specialist. A little bit Colorado, moved here about 3 years ago, and just graduated with my master's from Denver.
Perfect. So show us what you have today. Let's look at how to make that chai tea.
Oh, absolutely. This actually goes back to sort of a funny story. I moved to Denver in the pandemic, and I'm a full-time grad student, and I had the really great experience of getting to work. And while I was there, I got to learn a lot about the history of tea and a lot about different tea practices. I had about 200 different loose leaf tea types, and some of them and it was all different sorts. So I got to learn just a lot and was able to help with teaching some classes. One of the benefits is that now I have a lot of tea, and I have a lot of tea knowledge. I have a little setup here. I'll see if I can show you. I just heated some water in a kettle. I have, teapot and a cup and some measuring spoons and things like that. So, chai tea.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about what's the first step? What do people need if they're going to make chai tea?
Now, I need a lot. Some of these tools I have are just because this is somewhat of a hobby for me. Tea, it's tied in with a lot of different really rich cultural heritages, and so different forms of making chai tea. A lot of times in families will develop different cultures have different ways of making it. It's a combination of spices that a tea base. Just a little bit about the foundations of tea. Green teas and oolong are all made from the same, called the Camellia sinensis. Produces these leaves, and the way that you treat the leaves is what creates the tea. Imagine like biting into an apple. If you leave the apple out in the, it'll start to turn brown over time, and that process is called oxidation. So when a tea leaf, if you let it oxidize, it will turn brown, but if you don't let it oxidize, then it remains green, and that's how you get green tea. And then that's how you get the tradition of oolong tea. Some of them are more black tea type or more green. But yeah, so whenever you're making chai, the chai is the essence of these spices that you're adding, different types of tea leaves in them. So you can make a green chai, you can make a black rooibos chai, which is a tisane, but that's another topic. So today, what we're going to be doing chai, I'm gonna grab it.
Perfect.
So this is my container of loose leaf. You can see the reflection. That's kind of funny, but this is a mate chai, and mate is certain kind of, it's technically a tisane, but it has all of these chai spices, and so yeah, this is what we're using today because it's what I have on hand. But also, I think typically when people think a Bombay chai or a masala, I think that's most typical. But today we're doing mate. So having some sort of tea, and sometimes they're pre-packaged in bags. We're doing, but in general, you need to have some sort of way of containing it. This isn't to use right now. I like to try out different ways of doing it. I have this container, which is kind of the tea inside of it, and then you set it on top of a container. So let's say this is about here. It releases in the bottom, and then the water will start to trickle down. So you can base a container, and then that way when you actually put it in your teapot, you won't have any of those in your cup. So basically, this will make about 2 cups of tea. I have the servings, and you just want to measure it level and put that in there. Tea, but then it has the chai spices, and so that's how you get, the mate chai. So you can go ahead and close that up. And then every tea has a different temperature to make it at. So today I heated my kettle to be about, I think it's 100. You don't have to be so precise. You can just, basically, you don't want it to burn. So you don't want to use hot boiling water. Boil your water and give it a minute to cool down a little. And then after that, set a timer. So here, actually, let me set my timer. Let's see. 3 minutes. That way, nothing happens. And you can just start to pour it in the leaves and make sure that you, get all of that going. And then 3 minutes to go. Top. You don't have to use a container like this. A lot of people will brew something in their teapot and then strain it on, or people will, before they actually put it into the water, they'll place it into a reusable bag. So there's lots of ways to make tea. You can make it work for your lifestyle, how much time you have, you want to put into it. It really is very flexible. It's an art, not a science.
Awesome.
But I just give that about 3 minutes. Now we got to pick a teapot. So I think we're going to use this one today. This is one of my favorites. Oh, here's a good example. So this is my tea cabinet. So if you wanted to not make a huge batch like this is a reusable strainer. And so it's just for a single serving. You can act as in a very big mug. But the idea is that you could actually just take this, fill it with some tea, like one can just place it in there and it'll steep it, wait about 3 minutes, and you just take it out and you're done. Something a little bit more complicated, but yeah. This would be for a situation of, because we're making more than one cup.
Awesome. So basically, while we're waiting for that, tell me a little bit about, repeat again, because we had a little bit of sound issue. How did you get into chai?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. How did you get into chai tea again? How did you get into chai tea making again? Could you repeat that part?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in the pandemic and I first moved to Denver. I was a full-time grad student and worked at a tea house. And the tea house had over 200 different types. And so I quickly just gained a lot of knowledge and honestly a lot of appreciation for teas. While I worked there, I was able to, just have a lot of really the health benefits and all of the things that tea can do, and also the ways that different cultures, like their ability to create these teas and have these different flavors come through. And it's really, really beautiful to me. So I have a lot of tea appreciation.
Awesome. So how, I think you mentioned, I think I heard somewhere along the grapevine that you're kind of newly married.
Yeah, I got married in May of 2022. So I guess 6 months, but not quite a year. I guess that's still my timer just went off, so that means it's time to go ahead and steep the tea. So it's in here. What I'm going to do is just set it, and it's going to release. And you can kind of see the water going down. Are you able to see that?
Yep, I can see that.
So right now, as it's straining, it's going a little slow, but everything's coming down. And then at the end, you can just leave this alone. All the leaves are still up here on the top. And then right here, we've got our tea, and we can just pour it into a cup. So this will make enough to fill about half of this pot. And if you and I were here together, then we would be enjoying this cup of tea together. But you just pour it into your mug, and you've got that clear, steeped tea.
So you're drinking tea, I'm drinking coffee, and awesome.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. So so tell me again. So you're married about you said a year, you said?
Oh no. I'm so sorry. I think your sound is going out somehow.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I'm able to see you, but I'm not able to hear you.
Okay. All right. So while we wait for her to get back on, Liz, why don't you go ahead and get out and get on again and see if that fixes the sound.
Oh, Nikki, I'm so sorry. I'm still not able to hear you.
All right. So 1 second, everyone. We seem to be having tech issues today. So
Okay.
she's working on the technical issues. So she'll be back momentarily. That's what sometimes happens. We've got a great interview coming up for her. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Awesome. All right. So tell me again, you've been married for a little over a year. How'd you two meet?
So we met when we were in college. I went to Baylor University, which was in Texas, and he and I both met there. And we dated throughout college because we met our first year. And then towards the end of college, we decided we weren't ready to get married yet, but we wanted to go to grad school. And so we decided to both just apply in some different cities and see if we could get the stars to align that we could go together. And that's how we both came to Colorado.
Awesome. Awesome. So what's your favorite activity in Colorado?
That's a great question. Since moving here, I have learned so much about skiing. My husband, he used to ski competitively and he lived in Colorado Springs growing up. And so he, like, moving back here, this was his dream. I'm originally from California. And so I've like learned the Colorado ways. I guess I'm sort of a transplant, as people joke around here, meaning that like I wasn't born in Colorado. And so I'm like learning how to ski. I recently learned not learned, you don't really learn how to snowshoe, but I've been snowshoeing in the last 2 years and I really enjoyed that. I think hiking in the winter is actually so much more fun than I ever expected. And so that's been a really great time.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't gone skiing in a while, and it's the second time I've heard about skiing this week, in fact. And I'm like, man, I want one day to go back to going skiing again. I remember how much fun it was. Of course, I'm one of those that basically would take the big hill that is for experts because I didn't want to take the beginner hill, even though I'm the beginner.
That's
awesome. Tell me a little bit about what you do at WorldVenture and stuff that you like about what you do at WorldVenture.
Sure, absolutely. So I have worked here at WorldVenture since August. I work as the partner care specialist, and it's just been a really sweet experience to be able to, just get to come into the culture and to get to be in the office and meet so many people that come from different backgrounds. Something I think that's really unique about WorldVenture is that our staff, and we're not only all over the world with our global workers, but also even just our headquarters staff is spread out some. I think most of us are in Colorado, but it's really just been so sweet to get to connect with people who live all over. I'm someone who grew up moving a lot in my life. And so I've gotten to live in a lot of different cities and states. And that's one way I love to connect with people, is through that like shared experience of places. And so getting to work in a place where everyone tends to have that same value of places and travel is something that really aligns with me and something I've really enjoyed.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me about, you said something in your educational background. I thought you said something about chaplaincy.
Yeah. So I had mentioned that I attend Denver Seminary. I actually just finished in December. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm currently writing my thesis paper, and I actually defend it next week. And I will technically graduate in May, although I have already finished all my coursework. So whenever I was in my program, I was studying like on the Master of Divinity track, and they let you concentrate. And so my concentration was in chaplaincy. I learned about chaplaincy first when we were in the pandemic. For a long time, I've been really passionate about the church and the nonprofit sphere. But when I had the chance in the pandemic to learn more about the clinical setting, and I mean, specifically crises that were happening, especially in healthcare, and people were needing to have spiritual support in hospitals. And that's when I first was exposed to chaplaincy. In my program at Baylor, I had a lot of the history and theology training in the Christian faith, and I felt really equipped in those areas, but I did not have any counseling skill sets. So when I went to Denver Seminary, learning about chaplaincy and the ability to learn these pastoral care and counseling skills, it really drew me in. So I studied chaplaincy specifically, got to take a lot of that coursework, and then I got to do some work at the Children's Hospital here in Denver. And it was an incredible experience to be able to walk alongside families, specifically in the area of cardiac pediatric care.
Yeah, that would be precious. Can you share any stories from that time, or is it something you can't share?
No, I mean, I can't share too specifically, but I think it was really incredible to be able to walk alongside families through the full scope of life. So with what I was doing as a cardiac chaplain, oftentimes actually my patients were babies. And so I was caring for the families much more often than I actually was interacting with the patients, because usually those conditions can be caught earlier on, praise God. But that did definitely change my the dynamic that I was in the hospital. It was much more family systems oriented than it was like individual care. And I think that's something that really I really appreciated, and something I loved getting to do was work with the parents specifically. I think that's really where I thrived. But getting to walk through the full scope of life, I mean, there were times when my patients would get to go home and I would get to celebrate with the families, and that was always so beautiful. And then there were days also, where I would be doing end of life care and baptisms and these different rituals to be able to honor the lives of the patients. And every day was different, but it was always such a privilege to get to be in that room and to get to share the space that I got to with those families. I think there's always going to be an impression on my heart. It'll be with me for the rest of my life.
Awesome. So how are you involved in your church?
Yeah, I had church taught for some time, because again, I moved here in the pandemic, and so that definitely shifted the way that you would visit churches and just get to learn about ways of meeting when there were no meetings. And so that was a bit of my background in the beginning. After my husband and I had first gotten engaged, we wanted to go through premarital counseling, and that actually brought us into church hopping again, because we wanted to go to a church that could do that with us. Just a really high value of ours. So I started attending a church here in Denver called Bloom. And it's been a really wonderful experience. They have a house church model where they really encourage believers to not only be together on Sunday mornings, but to also be engaging in community and all that goes with it through house churches as well. And my husband and I, just being in the middle of working full-time in grad school, we actually are hoping to join one soon, because that's something we just both really care about, but also you have to be realistic with what's happening in your season of life. So we're looking forward to joining.
Yeah, we have a situation with that with a few people, at the church that I attend, where we have these long working hours, and so one of my volunteers is actually engaging with them in scripture via text messaging so they can feel involved in the church even as they work so many hours. So no, I totally get that, where you have to do what you got to do to get to find that sense of community.
Yeah, like at this church, I mean, the ways that people have, I mean, when I was especially busy, I think I'm out of that season now, praise the Lord. But I feel like whenever I was at my busiest, I so appreciated the efforts that people made to connect with me, and realizing that I had some limitations, which I hate having limitations. So that was like hard for me to accept, but really it's a beautiful thing to be able to receive the help that you need, and also like the connection you don't have to initiate. So.
Oh yeah. In fact, there's a book that I used to book review way before WorldVenture. I used to do some book reviewing, and one of them was a book about this group in Chicago, this group of people that would just get together every week and they would just cook together.
Wow.
Yeah, it was and then she created a cookbook out of it, and some of the recipes aren't so bad. You have to test it, just like at WorldVenture, we have different, some of our people are foodie people, and they create recipes, and I have to test them before I publish them, right?
Well, of course. I mean, other way.
So, but anyway, so let's talk about that with discipleship. I mean, there is totally a whole bunch, hundreds of different like coffee shops and tea shops around the country, and even tea and coffee is used as a way for people to connect on a different level. So, what are your thoughts on discipleship?
My thoughts on discipleship. I think oftentimes like words have connotations, and I think about discipleship and mentorship, and oftentimes those words are used interchangeably and they can be so different. I have a spiritual mentor in my life. Her name's Becky, and she has walked alongside me as I have just gone through different life stages in the last 3 years, living in Colorado. And we have this relationship where she has gone through the life stage I'm already in, and she has so much wisdom to offer to me. But that doesn't mean that I can't be intimately involved in what's happening in her life as well. So I think there's like this sort of respect that you have in mentorship, knowing that like I am the recipient of this person's care and wisdom. And it's okay to make it about me whenever it needs to be that way. But it is beautiful when it can be that reciprocal relationship in those moments. But then I think about discipleship, and it's much less clear. I think oftentimes there's like a discipleship that happens peer to peer. That's really beautiful. Getting to learn and like talk about iron sharpening iron. And I think that is beautiful. And especially when the church can be a space for like peer to peer discipleship, I think it's a stunning representation of the gospel. But there's also a discipleship that happens a lot like mentorship. Caring when like someone in a pastoral role or someone who just embodies those characteristics is able to support and walk alongside someone spiritually. I think it's extremely important for people to exist in a community where you can have that sort of discipleship in both directions.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And, so tell me, about any stories that you have of discipling others without mentioning names, of course, but
Sure.
any stories of where you were able to disciple. I mean, any tips to those out there that basically where people can look for these opportunities?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's so important. I mean, I think in the scriptures we talk about this idea of being poured into in your cup, and is your cup full, this metaphor. And it's so important that, you are continuing that process of like being poured into and pouring out. So in my own life, in my own mentorship, I think I've learned a lot about bias and the importance that, the Lord has led me through things in my life that allow me to be able to connect with others. Although whenever I'm mentoring, it's so important that I am aware that what's happening in someone else's life isn't exactly what happened to me. And so it's beautiful to be able to relate, but it's so important to be able to individualize what someone is experiencing and sort of stepping out of yourself and being able to listen fully to what someone is sharing without I don't know, like weaving it with your own story, to be able to like look at it separately and to be able to appreciate the connection, but to exist when someone is being vulnerable and sharing about themselves, to be able to be fully with them in their story rather than attaching yourself. I think that has been a really beneficial skill that I've developed to be able to provide people with care in a way that honors what they're experiencing, and also like being able to, even if you are the mentor, to be able to say, I have something to learn from this person and I want to listen intently.
Yeah, no, yeah. The thing that I read one time is don't assume that you know the answers to their questions.
Right.
And I read somewhere, and I don't remember where, but I thought it was really good advice because unfortunately I'm a fixer. I'm a fixer. I have a problem with that. I get it. But, the listening part is a good skill, and listening fully to their story, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite discipleship books? What books do you recommend to our audience to read on discipleship, on learning how to do that? I know there's books on leadership, there's books on everything in the world out there, but what do you have any go-to stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is influenced a lot by the people that I have mentored in my life, but there's a book called Boundaries. Have you read that before?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. It was actually helpful to me some years ago. Very
Sure.
helpful.
It's a beautiful way of valuing the importance of the spiritual integration while also just being a very logical and informed book. I think the way it's broken up is really easy to be able to discuss.
Yeah.
The way that it's chunked, I just think has a really great flow to it. But yeah, it's such a great resource to be able to help someone. Because so often when you're mentoring, I mean, of course, you're doing like personal work, but so much of what we experience in our life is influenced by family and friends and these other relationships that we have. And so I think that has been my go-to book. It's just, yeah, you really can't beat it. I highly recommend.
Oh
So
yeah, that book that was given, it was given to me by someone when I was going through something. It was great. That book I always highly recommend. In fact, one, I don't know if you've heard of Women of Faith.
mm, I've
So
heard of it.
yeah, so Women of Faith used to be something that happened quite often. They traveled, they had a lot of books, and some of the people are still speaking and all that. One of them, who I don't think is with us any longer, but what she said in one of her books is that oftentimes we view things through the lens of our own experience, our own pain, and everything else. And I thought that was very astute. Um, but yeah, so tell me, so we had, and always in in these episodes, we talk about the topics that WorldVenture has brought up on their social media.
Mm.
And one of the things we have is Rob and Lisa Atkins from Bolivia. Now, so they have Lisa. It looks like she's an incredible cook and baker. And one of these days, I pray to be able to meet up and face to face and be able to experience some of that cooking. Um, I've seen some of the pictures and seen some of the recipes. What is it?
You said, please, Lord, let me experience.
Let me, please. I'm a bit, yeah. I'm trying to lose weight and having, seeing all that food online is just, anyway. So she does a lot of stuff with the girls transition home, and she does a lot of cooking. She shows them how to cook. She introduces them to American cooking as well, but because it seems to be some of it popular. But she also does a lot, teaches them how to be able to get that skill so they can feed themselves, and so it's interesting. Do you bake or cook on at any point?
So I recently in the last year, have started making bread. And so I have a sourdough starter. And what happens is it's sort of like a pet. You have to take care of it once a week and you have to feed it, and then you can keep it in your fridge. And so once a week, I have to, take care of my pet, so you call it. So I make bread. But the way that it works is you have this extra at the end, and you can either throw it away or you can use it in a recipe as a natural yeast. And so I've started making sourdough pizza.
Mm.
And that has been so much fun because every week, I get my bread, but then at some point in the week, you get to make pizza. And it has been so much fun. It's like a creative outlet because there's so many ways that you can, choose your toppings, and you honestly can make it healthier than you'd expect. Like you can add a surprising amount of vegetables on top of a sourdough. So yeah, I think that's been my favorite thing to do recently because it's honestly very easy. But I mean, it's probably the best thing I can make. So
I have a specialty of mine that I really love to make every so often, and I know it's more of a Christmas recipe, but I actually make it anytime I want to fill the house with warmth. And it's a recipe that I have for gingerbread.
oh,
Uh, yeah, and in fact, what they have there's a two recipe to it. Though, so the plain gingerbread is what I normally make. But once in a while, if I'm feeling especially creative, I might make the one where you have to poke holes on the top and pour a special butter sauce over it after it's done. Yeah.
I'm
So
your house. It make me gingerbread with a
yeah,
special.
there we go. I'll make gingerbread. So it's so talk about have you in your house church and in your circle of friends, do you find that the food is a great way to bring up spiritual conversation, or um, tell me about that?
Absolutely. So back to my bread. This is like my hobby right now. So you touched on a really great topic for me. But with the recipe, you actually end up making 2 loaves of bread every week. And so I don't eat 2 loaves of bread in a week. So I always have extra. And it's been a really fun practice. A couple of sometimes, you need to keep that extra loaf, but there have been times where I've had a friend who is really struggling with something in their life, and I can drop off a delicious homemade batch of bread that's warm and soothing. And yeah, it's just been so much fun to be able to do that. I've had a friend who even they helped me get some really cool artisanal flour, and I got to thank him by making him a loaf of bread with the flour he gave me. And I think it's just that sweet, reciprocity of being able to care for others and to be able to have something tangible to give. I've never been someone who I would say has the love language of gift giving, but I think this has been the first time I've really been able to learn about how enriching it can be to give a gift, and also a gift that nourishes someone in a very tangible and real way.
I love that. That is a beautiful, beautiful saying. In fact, if I remember, I may quote you in it. So we posted a little bit on 1 Corinthians 16, 8-9, which is delays to our plan, which is basically talking about the effective work in our churches and ministries. So basically, in part of that, I wrote, delays to our plans might be a kingdom building delay, as in the case of Paul in 1 Corinthians. So how can we be sensitive to where God is leading us to effective work in our churches, ministries, or our mission orgs?
Man, you gave me a tough question.
I know I try to do that since.
Well, I think honestly, so often it's really easy to think about what the Lord is doing in our own context. It's really easy to shrink the power of God into our own understanding. And so when you look at your own life, or you're thinking about the context of God's impact in your church, and I think anytime we can make the choice to expand our vision and to be able to look out, to be able to look at the churches in our community and they're thriving, or the churches in our country or our global churches, and to be able to expand your vision, I think that can really bring contentment, because so often we're trying to see evidence of God's presence in our lives and in today, and we shrink and shrink and shrink. And so have these opportunities to open up and be able to see God's bigger picture in the world. I think that I can bring about this perspective in the world that I think is much more balanced when we are looking to the Lord's larger picture rather than our own day-to-day picture.
Yeah, that is a great thought there. So we've made different postings on the America region and the Americas, or the Africa region and the Americas region. And what's interesting is some of the comments we received on the Americas basically were more like nationally centered, but the Americas region actually includes North and South America, and Africa, of course, the whole continent. So why is prayer important to the work our people, our colleagues are doing around the world? Where have you seen, being that you're new to WorldVenture since last August, right?
Right.
Where have you seen an answer to prayer as you've been here, seeing God at work through WorldVenture?
Man, that's a great question. So a little context on WorldVenture. We have a daily prayer meeting that happens every afternoon, Monday through Thursday. And we have these opportunities to get to connect with different workers on the field in all these different regions. And they get to share the ups and the downs. They get to share how they came to have this calling to cross-cultural ministry. And it's absolutely incredible to get to pray over them and to get to be in community. There's 30 people or more on this call getting to listen and synthesize what they're experiencing. And I think that I don't know exactly if I can answer this question yet, but I've only ever seen someone come to that call one time. And I think what I'm really excited for is the day that I'll get to connect with our global workers and get to see them again and to get to have an update, since that time when we did. Knowing that that day will come, be in person or be it again on that prayer call. I'm really looking forward to that. But I often see that other people on staff who've been there longer than me, when they get up to pray, they'll mention something that wasn't mentioned in that call. And that that person has spoken deeply with that missionary and has been able to learn something that wasn't even shared, but that they remembered and retained and decided to pray over. And whenever I see that, it always kind of gives me the chills, because I think, man, the longer that I'm here, the more likely it is that I'm going to be able to see those full circle moments. And it's just exciting to be part of.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to thank Liz for coming today and showing us. But before we head off on, to our day for today, tell us again. Let's talk about. Remind everyone on where they can get the tea leaves and where they can get this equipment and everything, so that they can create tea that maybe they can invite their neighbor, they can invite someone who's on the outside of their church cliques, and they can come together with these new people and have some good conversation over a cup of tea.
Absolutely. Something I love about tea is how accessible it is. So, to make it simple, you could go to your grocery store, pick up some loose leaf tea, and boil some water and put it in a mug. And it's that simple. And then the more that you come to appreciate the art of tea, you can pick up some equipment if you want to. So I would say if you were someone who's interested in loose leaf tea, it's always wonderful to shop local. Most cities do have a tea shop or the ability to get loose leaf tea. But I also know there are places, you can buy bulk loose leaf tea as well. But for me, I go to a shop that is in Littleton, Colorado. It's called In Tea. And that is the tea shop where I worked whenever I was in that phase of my life. And you can buy loose leaf tea there. As long as you have tea, whether it's already in a bag or if it's loose, if you own a strainer, you can use that. But there's also little tools like this. I think this was about $10 maybe. But you can use it for life. You can put it in your dishwasher and it's really easy. And you can literally just put it in your cup and then steep it for however many minutes. And usually the tea that you purchase, it'll tell you what a good temperature is, and it'll tell you what a good amount of time it is to, let it rest in the water before you take it out. So
awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Liz, stay on for a few minutes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be sure to get them to Liz, and she can find them after I tell her where your comments are on what platform. But thank you for joining us, everyone. We will see you online later on.